Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome to the Irish NFL Show in association with QuinBet, and we are part of the Believe Network. I'm delighted to be joined by Ryan Green, aka Hacker, 8 to 10 every night on 1010XL here in Jacksonville, in the Jacksonville area. You're breaking down all the latest Jaguars news. He'll also talk about Florida State, Florida Gators, and also whatever's going on in high school football, which is going to be a busy couple of months coming up, Ryan.
There's no question. It's a great time of year. Glad to be with you. And yeah, there's a lot to get into with the Jaguars. No question about that.
So let's get straight to it. How's training camp been? I know today was the first day with the pads. Obviously, things sound a lot different when the pads are on. What have you been seeing? Any players that have stood out in the last the last 24 hours?
Well, I think the big thing for me being down there last year and this year is you can tell there's a difference. Year 2 for Liam Coen, right, and his staff. They established themselves last year, made a big impact, getting to 13 wins. Now they're looking to sustain that. I mean, it's been, golly, almost 3 decades, right? You got to go back to 1998 and 1999 since the last time the Jaguars went to the playoffs in back-to-back years. I mean, we've seen this before. The Jaguars will pop up for a year, and then they'll plummet back down to planet Earth the very next year. So the key word here is sustainability, cohesiveness, chemistry, building all that. And I think you've seen that this offseason. I love what I've seen out of Trevor Lawrence, year 2 with Liam Coen and Grant Udinski in that system. And then I got to tell you something. Do they have a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson? No. But my goodness, what they do have is maybe the deepest wide receiver room in the NFL. I mean, the idea of a 4-wide set with Parker Washington, Brian Thomas Jr., Jacoby Myers, and Travis Hunter, I mean, that is insane to think about, but that is what we're talking about right now. And those 4 wide receivers, particularly Washington, BTJ, and Hunter, have really stood out in the first week of training camp.
Yeah, and we'll touch on the wide receiver room and a couple of the other position units in a little bit. I guess we'll start at the start. The first kind of shot in anger was from Coen with obviously with 10:10 in the morning, talking about he pulled out the phone and went on NFL.com and couldn't find any reference to the Jaguars. He really played up to that stuff with the small market, the small market reference from Peyton last year. And it fires the players up, and it's fuel for Coen. How is that kind of received by the coaching staff and some of the players that you've seen the last few days?
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting is I was the guy the entire offseason that didn't think they'd be able to do that 2 years in a row. I mean, you could play the lack of respect card last year, but then you win 13 games, right? You win a division championship. You're one of the best teams in football. It took a Superman effort from Josh Allen to knock you out of the playoffs. So I thought coming into this offseason, that lack of respect stuff was going to be gone. And then you see the power rankings come out, right, in July, and the Jaguars were like 15th in the power rankings. And the one that really got me, Trevor Lawrence was a top 5 finalist for the NFL Most Valuable Player Award last year. I saw like quarterback ranking boards that had him outside the top 10 of quarterbacks coming into 2026. I thought, holy moly. So, I mean, that is just blood in the water for Liam Coen and the Jaguars. They love playing the lack of respect card, and they're going to be able to do it 2 years in a row because I think people are sleeping on them. I think everywhere you turn in the AFC, the Houston Texan talk, my gracious, we'll get to that in a moment. I don't understand that for the life of me. Great defense. That offense to me has a lot of questions, but you hear about Mahomes coming back in Kansas City, Drake May and Bo Nix and what they did last year, and that's all fine and well. But when you talk about the AFC, the Jaguars are like the 10th or 11th story, and I think the NFL is sleeping on what's going on here in Duval County.
Yeah, and kind of to touch on that, I was listening to Tony Baselli, and again, the early days of training camp where he was mentioning that, the 13-4, great story, but that's what it is. It's history. And he mentioned having to climb the mountain again, and that's all that him and the rest of the coaching staff are talking about. Based on, obviously, we'll touch on the Texans as well. Can you see the Jaguars putting together a similar season like last year, bearing in mind that, of course, your colleague Leon Searcy in the late 90s with Mark Brunell, when they strung a couple of years together in the playoffs? It hasn't really happened since then. Do you see, and this will obviously help the reputation of the Jaguars, can you see them replicating last year's season?
I don't know if they're going to win 13 games again, because that's hard to do, right? I mean, if you go 13 wins back to back years, that's rarefied air. I mean, there's not a lot of teams that do that. But yeah, I mean, could I see 10-7 in a playoff appearance, 11-6, or even 9-8 in a playoff appearance? Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, you got to go back to when Leon played 98-99, the last time they went to the playoffs in back to back years. I don't know. And this might sound stupid, but I'll try to phrase it correctly. I think this team might be better, but I don't know if that will reflect in the win column. Because again, 13 wins is hard to do. I think this team could be 11-6, and I might like their chances more in the playoffs this year than I did as a 13-4 team last year. I think they learned a lot last year. They kind of knocked on the door last year. I think they might be ready to open that door this year. I think they are going to take what they did a year ago and run with it. So again, 13, I don't know, but I could very easily see 11-6, 10-7, and another playoff appearance.
Right, which could end up very much winning the division yet again. I got questions, and I'm not going to call it the elephant in the room because it's been talked about a lot. ETN leaves the building. His 1,000+ yards and his touchdowns, his double-digit touchdowns leave the room too. You've Tootin now, who's the de facto RB1. Chris Rodriguez, who was not active until yesterday, I don't think, the weekend anyway. And LaQuint Allen. Do you think that kind of running back by committee is going to be able to do enough to replicate not just the yards but the production that ETN had? And I mean, we can see that Rodriguez is definitely the battering ram of that group. Do you think that running back room is going to be effective, and is it going to be effective enough to battle the Texans in the division?
I think so. I mean, ETN, great player. I mean, he put up ridiculous numbers last year. Was it 1,400 yards from scrimmage, 13 touchdowns? But if you look at a lot of that was on toss sweeps. A lot of that was on, passes into the flat. Like, I think about that San Francisco game, that long 50-yard run was around the edge. The Jaguars last year struggled in short yardage, and that's why they went and got Chris Rodriguez. And let's be honest, would they have loved to have ETN back? Yeah, they would have. But you know as well as I do, once New Orleans threw $14 million a year, that just wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to pay $14 million a year. So you wish Travis the best. He goes home to Louisiana, and you move on. I like Bashel Tootin. I like LaQuint Allen, and I like Chris Rodriguez. Chris Rodriguez is interesting. I've talked to people up in Washington who just say Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator last year, just didn't use him. I mean, he was a 500-yard rusher, scored 6 touchdowns, and his yards per carry was very good because he didn't get a lot of opportunities for whatever reason. He comes down here. He worked with Liam Coen as a college player when they were both at the University of Kentucky. I think you factor him in as your short yardage goal line guy. I know they love Bashel Tootin, who scored 6 touchdowns in his own right as a rookie last year. Like you said, LaQuint Allen Jr. is going to get more reps. Are they going to have a 1,400-yard guy like ETN? No. But the 3 of those guys combined, yeah, I think they'll make up for what they lose at ETN. I do.
And kind of piggybacking on that, I mean, we've heard Coen talk about the stink that was left over from the discrepancy in the yards on the ground from what was it, games 1 through 12, and then from 13 through 18. I mean, you had 128.1 on the ground weeks 1 to 12, and that went down to 91.2. And I don't want to say it was a factor in the loss to Buffalo, but it may have been something to do with it eventually. But I think, from what I've seen of Rodriguez, not just at Washington, but from what I've heard already, he's going to be your guy that Coen loves, just embracing contact, grabbing those extra yards where nobody thinks he's going to get them, those 3 to 4 bruising yards that are really hard to get, especially in the colder weather up north. So, I can see Coen really, and I know that they were going heavy on the run game this morning. I think it was a little bit of rain. It was a little bit sloppy this morning. It might have been. So it's good to see the kind of the use of Rodriguez and his factor being taken a bit more seriously down in Jacksonville. Big story as well. We have not just the running back room, but I mean, you talked earlier about the wide receiver room. The Parker Washington question has got to be, on a lot of people's minds, not least his. I mean, he's on the rookie contract, looking for a big payday. Versatile player. He can do a lot. Great with the yards after catch. We've seen him in the return game. I mean, it's probably going to be a big chunk of change, as we all know, with wide receivers. Now, he probably wouldn't be in the wide receiver one room, but he's going to get paid whether it's Jacksonville or somewhere else. Do you think, or what have you heard, is Parker Washington somebody in the Jags' future plans?
Oh, I absolutely think they want him to stay, and we'll ultimately see. It's a slippery slope because they gave Jacoby Myers $20 million a year last year, right? So if you're Parker Washington, and particularly Parker Washington's reps, I'm not even sure the conversation begins until you get to the $20 million a year mark, because that's what Jacoby Myers got after only 2 months here in Jacksonville. I don't blame Parker Washington, at least to this point, to not sign a contract, because what happens if you bet on yourself, you go out there and you're a 1,000-yard receiver and you catch 80 balls and you have 9 touchdowns, well, then your number is going to go up. Now, on the flip side, if you have a down year, maybe your number goes down. So that's the chance you're going to take. But I'll tell you this, and you know this as well. I mean, look, if you go back to December and January of last year, and you just blank out the name, you white out the name, you look at the stat line, there were not 5 receivers in the National Football League in the last 5-6 weeks of the year last year that put up better numbers than Parker Washington. I mean, I want to say the last 5 games, including the playoffs, his worst game was 87 yards and a touchdown. That's his worst game. He missed a quarter and a half of the playoff game against Buffalo. He still went for over 100 and a touchdown in a playoff game. So Parker Washington is going to get paid. I hope it's here in Jacksonville. Will a franchise tag or anything come in play? I certainly hope not. I hope it doesn't get to that point. But absolutely, I believe right now the Jaguars want Parker Washington, and they are diligently working to accomplish that moving forward.
Yeah, I remember the Titans game. I think was the last of the season when they ran up the score in the Titans. He had a huge game that day. Touching on the O-line again, probably fair to say a mid-ranking O-line based on 25's numbers. Van Lannen's still in the PUP as far as I know. We've heard Gladson say that it's a solid unit, it's a together unit. Do you have question marks about the not just the health, but the effectiveness of this kind of unit, keeping Lawrence upright and just staying healthy for the rest of the year? I did hear his talk today. I'm not sure if it was Coen or somebody else saying that Anton Harrison might be put at left tackle just to see if that's a go. So, any concerns? What are you seeing? What are you hearing about the O-line?
One of the things I like about this offensive line is 9 of the guys that are here on that O-line all played a good amount of snaps last year as Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, if you think about it, Van Lannen, Cleveland, Hainsey, Macari, Harrison, and then you can go Monheim, Edoga, Walker Little. I mean, there was a lot of guys that played a lot of snaps. Wyatt Milam as well here in Jacksonville. So they got a lot of depth. They draft Emmanuel Pregnon in round 3 out of Oregon. I know they like him. He's going to be one of the future, probably offensive guards starting maybe in 27, certainly by 2028. But as far as this year, I'll tell you where I was wrong. A month ago, if everybody's healthy, if you would have asked me, I've been like, okay, Van Lannen, Cleveland, Hainsey, Macari, Harrison. That's your offensive line, left to right. I no longer believe that. I think with Van Lannen being on PUP, whether that had the main factor or not, I'm starting to now believe Anton Harrison's going to be your left tackle. I've seen them work him in enough at practice, people I've talked to. I think that's the direction they're starting to go. Anton's going to be your left tackle. Cleveland will still be your left guard. Hainsey will still be your center. I believe there's a competition at right guard between Wyatt Milam and Patrick Macari. Makari had offseason surgery. They're easing him in. Milam is getting all the first team reps right now. A former third round pick from last year. I know they really like him. And then with Van Lannen's healthy, I think he would be your right tackle. If he's going to miss the first couple of games, it may be Walker Little. So that's a complex answer. I think when all is said and done, when everybody's healthy, hopefully in opening day, I think you're looking at Harrison at left tackle, Cleveland at left guard, Hainsey at center. I think Wyatt Milam is going to be your right guard. That's the way I'm leaning right now. And I think Cole Van Lannen, when healthy, will be your right tackle. They're going to flip-flop Harrison and Van Lannen.
Okay, now let's talk about the guy who didn't get much playing time, the big draft pick from 25, Travis Hunter. We've seen him. Obviously, there's all the stories about, is he going to be primarily playing corner? Is he going to be used more at wide receiver? We've seen, I think anyone that's watched any coverage of the Jaguars over the last week have seen that it's going to be, it looks like a lot of both, and they would be they would be unwise not to use him in both circumstances because he's such a special talent. He's bulked up. He looks, a lot healthier and a lot more physical than this time last year. Hopefully that'll help with some injuries, but he's getting a lot of positive press from the camp. We're looking for big things from Hunter for year 2.
Absolutely. In fact, I think Sunday was his best practice as a professional. With what he did at wide receiver, made the catch of the day. Also had an interception off of Nick Mullins. Travis Hunter's best practice to me as a Jaguar came on Sunday. The narrative that he was only going to be a defensive back, I don't know why that even started. That's obviously not the case. He's going to play defensive back. He's going to play a lot of it. But make no mistake about it, there's going to be a role for him on offense as well. Nothing has changed from their philosophy from last year. But you look at the makeup of the roster, they do have Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington and Brian Thomas Jr., where at DB, you got Jordan Lewis and Jarian Jones and Monteric Brown. He's needed more at DB. So I think a large role at defensive back, but there is going to be a wide receiver element there. He's bulked up. I'm sure you've seen photos. He says he's added 10 pounds of muscle. It looks like even more than that to me. He's bigger than he was a year ago. He's still lightning quick out there. And to come back off it was a significant knee injury. It was a knee injury that cost him 9 months. And he hasn't missed a beat once camp started. He's flying around. He's jumping in the air. He's doing this. He's doing that. It's been very, very impressive. I am very, very excited, I guess would be the word to use, about what Travis Hunter could be in year 2. Again, he feels like last year was almost a redshirt year. I mean, remember, he got hurt right after he had 100 yards receiving in that game in London against the Rams. He was just finding himself before he got hurt last year. I think that was the start of what's going to be a terrific career. And yeah, I think Travis Hunter is going to have a very impactful 2026 season.
Before we talk about the defense, a lot of talk about the tight end room. Boyle on top of Brenton Strange, got that big contract, and Tanner Koziel. We're hearing a lot of 12, 13 personnel. Something Coen loves. Looks like he's going to be a big proponent of that in the season coming up. It seems like it's a fashionable kind of thing from last season, playing 13 on offense. Impressed with Boyle?
Yeah, it's funny. I interviewed him on Sunday after practice, and I've shook hands with a lot of guys in my life. Nate Borkature has a pair of paws on him. I mean, I felt that handshake. There's some strong mitts that Borkature's got, and he's big, too. He's a really big, physical-looking guy, and he's not even as big as Tanner Koziel. Tanner Koziel's taller than he is. Koziel, I think, 6'7", Borkature 6'5". They're both physical-looking guys. Borkature was considered to be one of, if not the best pass blocking or run blocking tight ends in the draft, and I totally understand why after seeing the pads come on earlier this week. So yeah, I think, look, there's questions when you have 2 rookies in one room. Now it helps when you have a guy like Brenton Strange in there as well. But when the Jaguars got ridiculed for their draft selections and not following the consensus board, well, that was not their consensus board. Their consensus board had Nate Borkature very, very high on their list. And they feel they got lucky to get Koziel in round 5. I know they really, really like those guys a lot. So yeah, there's a lot of intrigue to me as to what those two young guys could do in this offense.
And well, before we kind of wrap up the division and then see how we see it playing out, obviously can't finish up a discussion about the Jaguars without mentioning the defense, Campanelli's defense, what they did last year, the play of Hines Allen, of Trayvon Walker. Obviously, Devin Lloyd has left the building, but you still got people out there like Foye Oluokun, Jack Kaiser could be a factor coming back in. Antonio Johnson's had a good camp so far. Eric Murray. We've already talked about Travis Hunter, even Jordan Lewis. I heard you talking about a possible battle between Ventrell Miller and Branson Combs. Is that correct for that linebacker position? The unit, obviously, at the start of camp, the defense always, I don't know if they take it personally or whatever, but they really give the offense a torrid time the first day or two of camp. It looks like it's evened out a little bit, but the defense has got that chip. And they want to prove that they want to replicate that number one run defense from 2025.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on the defense. I do think there's a battle between Ventrell Miller and Branson Combs to replace Devin Lloyd. If you'll remember, I mean, last year this time, we thought Ventrell Miller might win that job from Devin Lloyd. They were listed as or on the depth chart, Devin Lloyd or Ventrell Miller. Obviously, Devin Lloyd won the job, and the rest is history. He had a great year and second-team All-Pro and got paid. So one would think Ventrell's got the quicker starting point to get that replacement job for Devin Lloyd. But I'll tell you, this kid Branson Combs is interesting. He's similar size to Devin Lloyd. Ventrell's 6 foot. Devin Lloyd was 6'3". Branson Combs is 6'3". He's listed at 6'3", 230 pounds. Former wide receiver, athletic as anything. I really like what I've seen out of Branson Combs. The question is he going to hold up in run defense? Because Ventrell can lay the wood at run defense. I think you might see a mixture of both guys in there replacing Devin Lloyd, but I do think Branson Combs is a factor there. And then when you talk about the other questions on the defense, who's going to be the third edge rusher, right? We know Hines Allen and Walker are studs. Who's going to be that third guy? They got to find a third guy. They haven't had one for a while. Is it Dennis Gardeck? Maybe. But then they're looking at these 4 young guys, B.J. Green and Danny Strigow, who are second-year players, and then rookies Wesley Williams and Zach Durfee. They want one of those guys or two to emerge. So far, a week into camp, I think that's probably B.J. Green. I think B.J. Green's had the best camp of those edge rushers, looking to be that third guy behind Hines Allen and Walker. And I'll tell you another guy that I noticed this morning is the kid from Atlanta that they traded Mason Smith for, Rook Arororo. Former second-round pick, just did not work out in Atlanta, much like it didn't work out for Mason Smith in Jacksonville. He's here, change of scenery. Pads come on Monday, and you noticed him. And you noticed him in a big way. He was dynamite in the one-on-one pass blocking drills. Absolutely beat a couple of the offensive linemen bad in those drills. Keep your eye on Arororo. I think a change of scenery is going to do that kid some good at defensive tackle.
And just to wrap up, I mean, we'll have to kind of talk about where we think the division is gonna play out. A little bit of a harder schedule, obviously, with the stadium in midway of renovation. It reduces the capacity, so that'll make it maybe make it a little quieter, but I don't think so. Less home games again, but how do you see the division playing out? I don't want to discount the Titans and the Colts just yet, but you kind of think that it's going to be another head-to-head tussle between the Texans and the Jaguars down the line.
Yeah, I think when you look at the AFC South, I think Tennessee is going to be better, right? But that's going to be relative because they won 3 games last year. Better is 6-10. Better is or 6-11 or 7-10. So I think that's probably where Tennessee is, improving, but probably a year away. I hated the Colts offseason. I hated everything about it. They released their heart with Kenny Moore and Michael Pittman Jr. and Zaire Franklin and Braden Smith and Kwity Paye. And what Indianapolis people will tell you is that, yeah, that was the nucleus, but they only went to 1 playoff game. Well, that's fine and well, but when you release that many guys or trade away that many guys, they never did replace Michael Pittman Jr., mind you. They're going to assume Josh Downs is going to take that role. They gave Alec Pierce $1 billion. Daniel Jones coming off the Achilles. there's things to like about the Colts. Tyler Warren, Jonathan Taylor, they're good. I just think they lost a lot of their backbone with the Kenny Moores and the Michael Pittman Jr.'s and Zaire Franklins of the world. So we'll see. And then, I think it's going to come down to Jacksonville and Houston. And here's what I'll say. I mean, Houston's defense might be the 2000 Ravens. I mean, they might be generationally good, but they were generationally good last year in the playoffs. And it didn't matter because their offense was awful. I mean, you think about that loss to New England. How many times did they sack Drake May? How many times did they force turnovers against Drake May? The Texan defense was outstanding in that divisional playoff game. Couldn't do any better. But it didn't matter because C.J. Stroud was terrible. I've said this on my show the entire offseason. Stroud has gotten a pass for some reason. If that was Trevor Lawrence that threw 4 interceptions in a playoff loss, can you imagine what the last 6 months would have been like? He would have gotten raked over the coals all offseason. But for whatever reason, C.J. Stroud's gotten a pass, and he's going to revert back to old form. He's going to look like his rookie self. Why? I mean, they got Nico Collins, a great player. They bring in David Montgomery. All right. He's not 25 anymore. Outside of Nico Collins, the Texan offense has no one that's going to scare a defensive coordinator. And C.J. Stroud, to me, is average as the day is long. For the life of me, I don't understand why he got a pass on the playoff performance last year. And I would take Trevor over him. And as a result of the Jaguars having the better quarterback, I'm leaning on the Jaguars winning the division for a second straight year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Stroud kind of dined out in his rookie year. Probably something to do with being an Ohio State, incredible quarterback in college. I think that brought him a lot of credit. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right with the Colts thing. We did a preview of all the divisions. I actually have Steichen being the first to be fired in the NFL this year. I think they've lost too much. Backing the truck up for Alec Pierce. Not sure. I mean, he maybe a wide receiver 2 at best when you look around the league. I think they were reaching out when they dropped the bank on him. But yeah, I see it the same way. I think the Jags are just going to squeak past. I think there's all the noise, all the positive noise you see. Coen has got, he's got another year of experience under his belt. The thing you got to worry about is if it's another great season, what's going to happen with Adinsky and Campanelli? Is that going to be it? Are they going to be the next hires for the Panthers or whoever it may be? So it's really a huge pivotal season for the Jags. They're going to Orlando next year. The new stadium opens in 28. So it's a really pivotal year this year for the Jags. And let's see how Coen adapts to year 2. Let's see how Trevor goes. And it's going to be a fun time in Duval. Ryan, hope to see you at the bank at some stage this season. Thank you again for your time, Ryan Hacker Green. You'll catch him at 1010XL. Sometimes with Leon Searcy, sometimes with Dave Campbell. You'll catch him 1010xl.com, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. local, but you will definitely get the downloads. Check him out. If you want your Jaguars information, you want your Jaguars news, ain't nobody better than the Hacker. Ryan, thank you again.
Appreciate you having me on. Anytime. Take care.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.